Alright, we're heading off to the studio today to talk about the Cranborne Audio Carnaby 500 Harmonic Equalizer. This device is the first of its kind, and I like to think about it as a selective saturation device. In full disclosure, although they have sent them over, that will not affect this review in any way, shape or form. If you enjoy what you watch here, please consider subscribing. If you really enjoy what you watch, then please consider dropping a super thanks. The Carnaby is different to what you might think it is. So we have our input and our output gains over here. The input and output is really useful to gain match anything that you're doing. It's split up into three different sections. We have our high shelf, our mid Q, and our low shelf. So on the high shelf over here, as you increase, this is adding harmonic content at the desired frequency that you want it to. Then on the mid-range over here, we're doing the same thing as we did on the high shelf, but now this is a bell shape. And remember, we're adding harmonic content, not necessarily equalizing the signal. And on the bottom, we have our shelf. The shelf uses a different kind of saturation circuit. It's more like a soft clipping circuit, so you can really add aggression to synthesizers, kick drums, anything that needs a bit more heft. But this is where the cool stuff really starts happening. I understand that adding gives me something, but my question is, what happens when we take things away? So let's say hypothetically over here, we have a bit of a boxy frequency, and we take it away. Carnaby is going to equalize down that frequency that we're talking about, but the magic happens where as I'm EQing it out, it is adding harmonics. So it's taking away the fundamental note of the boxiness that I'm trying to remove, but it is adding harmonics above it so that I'm not losing the energy of the initial source. That applies to all of these bands. Next thing I want to talk about is OptoSync. So let's bring both units into the circuit like this. Now they're both active, and what's amazing here is that OptoSync allows the controls of the device on the right to mirror the controls exactly of the device on the left. Now what that means is, although these are half dB stepped parts, they are digitally controlling what is happening inside the box. If I click in OptoSync, you see this LED now changes color. That means that anything I change here, as you can see that gray light flashing, is being mapped out onto these devices. How do I know that they're going to be in stereo matching pairs? Once again, the people at Cranborne Audio have decided to go way over the top here and add a calibration circuit inside on dip switches. You can run the calibration setting inside of the box, and then both units will be exactly matched stereo. Bypass switch here at the bottom. For me, hearing harmonic content is quite difficult a lot of the time, and this device starts adding harmonics in a really subtle way, so having the visual indication of that happening is extremely useful. Yeah, that is adding some serious bottom end and adding a beautiful amount of bite, but without it being too harsh. Give me the bottom octave. Let's try the snare drum with the same kind of treatment, but more snare related. A little bit of fizz, a nice amount of chest as well. One of the things with bass is always to try and get the upper mid-range to make it poke out of the speakers, and it's like such an instantaneous maneuver with this guy because you're adding harmonics, not just frequencies, which just makes it inherently more musical. This is why this is selective saturation. You can pick your moments, pick where you want it to go, pick what the frequencies, take them away and add in the harmonics of those frequencies. That's insane. That's a sound I've actually been looking for that sound.
When you're bleeding out my heart, like a soldier in retreat, calling out your name, like heartbreak on repeat. It's getting harder to love, harder to love. When you're bleeding out my heart, soldier in a tree, calling out your name, like heartbreak on repeat. It's getting harder to love, harder to love.
So what's super cool about this is that oftentimes I hear like pop vocals that feel quite mid-forward. Sometimes it feels like there's a bit of those boxy frequencies just pushing forward, and anytime I try to EQ something like that, it never really sits the way I want it to. But here, I can't push some of the more unfavorable frequencies because I'm not adding gain to those specific areas, I'm adding harmonics around those areas, which adds a really beautiful feel.
When you're bleeding out my heart, I'm like a soldier in retreat, calling out your name, like heartbreak on repeat. It's getting harder to love, harder to love. When you're bleeding out my heart, I'm like a soldier in retreat, calling out your name, like heartbreak on repeat. It's getting harder to love, harder to love. When you're bleeding out my heart, I'm like a soldier in retreat, calling out your name, like heartbreak on repeat. It's getting harder to love, harder to love.
It just opens up the top in such a natural way, but at the same time there's the stunning saturation. It just kind of adds a bit of that, I don't know if grainy is the right word, but it makes a park in the mix.
When you're bleeding out my heart, like a soldier in retreat, calling out your name.
interesting because when you flick it in, it feels like, okay, yeah, there's something happening. Can kind of feel that. And then when I take it out of the circuit, it just feels like it falls over completely. So, the Cranborne Audio Carnaby 500 equalizer. I quickly realized Cranborne Audio are onto something very serious here. This is a completely unique device, and like I said to you during the description, there's 3 separate saturation circuits here that are absolutely ridiculous. Every one of them could be a product on its own, but as per usual, Cranborne Audio have just over-delivered. Thinking about things like OptoSync, if you're working with things like a Deca tree, you can put 3 of them together, and then all of a sudden you have perfect equalization and harmonic generation across 3 channels that match each other 100%. Things that I think that could be implemented and maybe perhaps improved in the future with this device. I know that if you have a Cranborne Audio mic pre, then you have a low cut, but like I said in my EQ169 video, most EQs, it would just be beneficial to at least have a 40 Hertz button or an 80 Hertz button just to be able to control some of the bottom end or to tailor the bottom end so that you can push into it while taking some of it away. The other thing I would have loved to see added to this device is the ability to be able to bypass each of the bands so that we could hear what each of the bands is bringing to us. Other than those 2 things, I don't have a concern about the build quality. I've had the Cranborne Audio 500 R8 rack for as long as the video has been out, as well as their EC2 microphone preamplifiers, and neither of those 2 devices have given me a second's worry. I'm really appreciative of the amount of work that Cranborne Audio has put into this to bring us something new to market. Thank you guys so very much for watching. If you've enjoyed what you've watched here today, then please consider subscribing. If you've really enjoyed what you've watched, then please consider dropping a super thanks. Most importantly, I hope that you're all looking after yourselves and you're being kind. I'll see you in the next video.